Dark Souls is a combat-focused game in which you travel the land beating enemy after enemy and boss after boss. There are many ways you can overcome the obstacles that are set in front of you. You can get up close and personal with swords and axes, or you can blast enemies from afar with magic and fire. But what would happen if we attempted this gauntlet of bosses with a more unconventional type of weapon? Can you beat Dark Souls with only shields? Before we jump in, let's talk about rules. Rule number 1. All damage must be done with shields only. Number 2. Summons, whether NPC or player, are not allowed. 3. Items that deal damage are also not allowed. 4. Buffs like Power Within and any sort of crystal magic weapon are not allowed. And 5. All bosses must be defeated. Now with all that out of the way, let's get on to the challenge. I chose Warrior as my starting class as the heater shield is a very good shield to start out with and the stat spread is fairly balanced. I chose the Master Key because of course Master Key, Master Gift, and then I started my journey in a cell with a man throwing dead bodies at me. The body had a key which I used to escape my cell. I then followed the path which led me to a giant flying pig with a hammer. I ran away like a little bitch. Progressing slightly further, I found my first weapon of choice, the heater shield. I also found a sharp thing with a handle, but I doubt that could do any real damage. Continuing, a boulder flew down the stairs, narrowly missing me and breaking a wall into the cell of the man who was throwing bodies at me. And while he did save me, the disrespect of throwing a corpse at me instead of just the key left me a little mad. So I bashed his skull in with my trusty hunk of metal. I looped back around and ran into the pig again. Now with my mighty weapon, I was ready to take him down. It took a hot minute, but eventually he fell, and I got an economy class ticket to Firelink Shrine. Upon reaching Firelink Shrine, I spoke to a very happy and cheery man.
But there's no salvation here.
He told me that I had to ring 2 bells of awakening, which I clearly need because I'm falling asleep trying to fucking listen to this guy. I then did a quick roundup of the items in Firelink and in the graveyard, then I head down to the Valley of the Drakes where I tried to steal from a dragon, which as any fantasy game or show ever has taught us is not a good idea. I did venture back down and grab my souls as well as the Firekeeper soul to upgrade my heal juice, something I'm probably going to be using a lot of. With my early game ritual out the way, I leveled up as much as I could and set my sights for the Burg. It was now I realised just what I had gotten myself into. Combat with the shield, as you would assume, is not fun. You have to get in super close to do anything, which often means you'll trade a lot of blows, not to mention it takes like 3 hits to kill a regular hollow. On my way through the Burg, I bought the resident key from the Undead merchant, robbed a few houses, and then fought the Black Knight. This fight was pretty slow going, but my strategy of parrying and jump attacking made sure he went down fairly quickly. I jumped through a flaming barrel and continued on to the boss. I even swapped out to a new shield, so now we're doing so much more damage. I stuck uncomfortably close to the Cow Demon's nether regions and essentially tickled his toes until he died. I was rewarded with the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, Solaire. He gave me his soapstone and told me to call if I ever wanted to have some fun. After flirting with the sun bro, I continued past the Drake and looked back to the bonfire. I eventually snuck past Drake and he jump manned out of dodge. I sat in my feelings at the bonfire for a bit before remembering I was on Gwyn's plan. I then continued to the Undead Parish. I proceeded through the first gate and head up into a tower where I found another one of those Black Knights. Upon killing him, he dropped me his shield, which we'll be using for the next boss. I quickly darted past Pumbaa and made a run for the bonfire. I head into the church and found a man with a shield way bigger than mine, clearly compensating for something. I defeated him and grabbed another upgrade for my heal juice. One of the challenges of using a shield as a weapon is that when it comes to dealing with more than one enemy, it's super hard to do anything without taking damage, as evidenced by what happened when I went up to the second floor. It took me a couple of attempts to get past these guys, but eventually I got past and killed the magic man. I saved a gold man from a cell and headed up towards the roof, where I was ambushed by a couple of gargoyles who were defending the bell. After using nearly all of my humanity to try and scrape by this fight, I was killed in a fiery blaze. On the second attempt, I focused the weaker fire-breathing gargoyle, and once he went down, the second one was much more manageable. I climbed the tower and rung the first bell of awakening. With the first bell out of the way, it was time to make my way to the second one, but before I left, I did watch the gold man I saved earlier slip and fall off a cliff. I decided I was going to go around the long way to Blighttown, so I head down towards the lower burg. It was here that I watched a few dogs jump into a fire, got into some trouble with the locals, and saved a master sorcerer from the impossible puzzle that is a locked door. I then proceeded through the fog wall where I ran into a goat man with 2 pet doggos. The doggos were however not good boyos, so I had to put them down. With the dogs out the way, the Capra demon went down fairly easy as I could block most of his attacks and then counter with my own. The goat dropped the key to the depths, our next destination. Upon entering the depths, I did some flashy parkour to grab the large ember. I then dropped down into the sewers, ran past the giant rat and used the water slide. Upon exploring this underground water park, I was invaded by some prick named Kirk. I say prick because his armour is very pointy. This man has the potential to drop a shield that would make the next section of the game significantly easier. Yeah, but he never dropped it. I continued exploring and found and killed another magic man before I head for the boss. As I entered the fog, I was greeted by a crocodile vagina fusion that could only have come from the magnificent mind of Miyazaki himself. I pounded that pussy for a solid 20 minutes before eventually it was slain, giving me the key to Blighttown. However, as there is nothing I need in Upper Blighttown, we're actually going to go all the way around and go in via Valley of the Drakes, because it's a bit easier. I entered the dreaded Blighttown from the easy side and dropped all the way down to the swamp below. It was here where a crazy lady with a sack over her head ambushed me. I pounded her with my big, black, night shield and then ran across the swamp towards a cave in the distance. As I traversed the fog, I ran into a perfect potential big titty spider GF. She however did not feel the same way about me, and eventually, like a Reddit incel, I showed her who's boss and rung the second bell of awakening, opening the way to Sen's fortress. Before heading that way however, I did decide to go and throw Quailag's brother off of a cliff for some extra souls. I entered Sen's torture house and was greeted by some snake people which I promptly ran past. I avoided swinging axes and rolling boulders all the way to the roof of the fortress, where there was a giant hurling explosive cannonballs at me. Before heading up there, I took a detour to grab the cage key where I was bested by one of the snake folk. I retrieved my souls, then ducked from cover to cover, making my way to the top, where I fought the bomber giant. He clearly couldn't handle the fact that he was being bested by a man with nothing but a shield, as he kept throwing tantrums and tiring himself out. I beat him and headed through the fog wall where I met the giant's dad, who was not happy that I had just killed his son in cold blood. He got his revenge more than a couple of times by throwing me off the arena, but I did eventually prove that my metal was better before I was Ubered all the way up to Anor Londo. The ride was cold and the demons had shit convo, so I gave them a 1-star review. Up until now, I've been using a +5 spider shield, which I realised while in the Iron Golem fight wasn't going to cut it anymore, or I guess bash it anymore. I needed a new weapon before Ornstein and Smo, so I made my way back through Firelink Shrine and then to the catacombs. I entered the catacombs where I found a bunch of skeletons and a necromancer controlling them. I killed the necromancer and pulled the lever. I ran past everything and made my way straight down to Vamos. From this newly added bonfire in the remastered version of the game, we can easily farm our next weapon, which after a fairly quick 8 minutes of farming, we got the Bone Wheel Shield. After which I upgraded it as much as I could, tested it on this Titanite demon, and figured while I'm here I might as well go ahead and kill the Moonlight Moth and get it out of the way.
Now that's a lot of damage!
I then decided to go and have a word with Dwayne Johnson. Turns out Jumanji wasn't the only game he's entered. I sent him back to the real world and took his ring. With the extra equip load, I could dress up in some extra drip. I took the Demon Express back to Anor Londo and started venturing through the area. I made my way down the elevator and met a gargoyle. He was mad that I killed his cousin and tried to attack me. I reunited them and continued to parkour over buildings into a massive display room where I darted across the rafters without falling once. I then took the spinny staircase down and made my way to the infamous Anor Londo archers. I politely asked him to move, and he did. I continued into the building where I met my booty call from earlier. I tried subtly flirting with him, but he saw right through it.
If I didn't know better, I'd think you had feelings for me.
This game doesn't have a romance option unfortunately, so I was forced to move on. My new shield made all the Silver Knights and Mimics look like a joke, at least in comparison to the damage I was doing before. Well, until I got a little too cocky and died to a Silver Knight. Eventually I cleared the area and head to the blacksmith who infused my Bone Wheel shield with lightning. I then head to the fog gate where I ran into Fat Man and Little Boy, who proceeded to nuke my health bar more than a couple of times. Fortunately, with patience and picking my moments, I whittled down Ornstein and proceeded to spank Super Saiyan Smo until death. I then entered a room and was given a bowl by a woman with some rather large mummy milkers. She told me to do something with it, but I don't really remember what she said. So I instead went back to the giant blacksmith and turned my spider shield into a crystal ring shield, giving me now some form of ranged attack. I spent some time just cleaning up some loose ends. I did Patch's quest, got my revenge, bought the crest of Artorias and made my way for Sif. When I met Sif, I decided to teach him a little trick, like how to play dead. With all those things out of the way, I decided to head back to Firelink Shrine, where I was given that Turbo Gok 3000 by a giant snake man. He took me back to a secluded area, which also happened to be the place where I'm supposed to put this giant bowl, and so I did. And from here, there are 4 ways we can go, and as I've already done the catacombs, I decided to head to Nito first. For Nito, I decided to tank up in some heavy gear and just try to outdamage him. The only real issue I had in this fight was his damn toxic attack and the skeletons constantly bombarding me. However, with my 20 S's I could out-heal them and I eventually took him down. Wishing I was doing a bit more damage, I decided to head towards the 4 kings. I sprinted straight to the pyramid head looking ass and then opened the seal. I tried to farm the rest of the chunks needed to get my weapon maxed, but the Dark Wraiths weren't having it. I persevered though and eventually got them and upgraded my weapon before heading to the 4 kings. I used the same heavy armor strategy here to reduce damage and one by one decimated each of the 4 kings. I then decided to take a little detour and head back to where it all began, the asylum. I fell through the floor in the main room where it appears a backup asylum demon was kept. I slayed the beast and head back to my cell where I found my G.I. Joe action figure that I forgot to take with me the first time. It would appear Gwen knew I would return for it as there are a bunch of Black Knights stationed here now. After defeating them, I flew back to Lordran, but not before hitting Oscar with a boulder and killing him again, of course. Next, I decided it was time to head to the Demon Ruins where I met some familiar faces, the Goat Men, the Bull Guys, and even another Asylum Demon. This one was on fire, however. I quickly extinguished him, same as the rest, and moved forward to the next fog gate. I entered the fog and was ambushed by another Vagina Centipede fusion this time. After pondering once again what was going on in Miyazaki's head, I killed the Centipussy demon, who dropped the ring that allows me to walk on lava. With this, I could now enter Lost Izalith, or I guess now it would be Found Izalith? With some tactical save quitting, Bed of Chaos went down with ease. That's 3 out of 4, that leaves us with one last area, the Duke's Archives. Before heading there, however, I killed the Hydra and the Gold Golem in Darkroot, so this guy drops me the Broken Pendant. I ran past most of the enemies, did a little jump off of this elevator to skip the first Seath fight. I ran down and grabbed the key, then headed back and did the Seath fight normally. After dying to him, I was trapped in his incel dungeon where he does unquestionable things to demon women. I turned off the music, got the key to escape and grabbed yet another Estus upgrade. After escaping the prison, I head towards the Crystal Caves where I changed my game mode to creative and flew over the area to reach the boss. Seath went down with little difficulty, and that's 4 out of 4. Before heading to the altar, I made my way back to Anor Londo to finish up some business. I killed Gwyn's daughter, son? I don't know, it's 2021, he can be whatever he wants. I killed it nonetheless and raided Gwyn's tomb. I then decided I had seen enough killing for a while and wanted to enjoy the finer things in life, so I made my way upstairs to check out the painting. When I attempted to examine the art, the painting gave me the Super Suck 3000. That shit felt so good I felt like I was in another world. Then I realised I actually was. I fought my way to the end of the area where I met a half-breed clearly parented by none other than Seath and Guinevere. The oddly attractive half-dragon lady told me to jump off a cliff, so I killed her. And then, with nothing else to do, I jumped off the cliff anyway. Turns out she was just trying to help. Oops. After all that, I decided to head down to the Darkroot Basin and have a nice relaxing dip in the lake. That plan was interrupted when I noticed a strange purple glowing orb. I went over to investigate when I was, for the second time in this game, pulled into another world against my will. However, this time, instead of being sucked through, I was manhandled. And I don't know about you guys, but I would much rather be sucked than manhandled. On the other side of the portal, I appeared to be in some sort of garden. I progressed further into it where I was greeted by the hall monitor. and I didn't have a toilet pass, so as you can imagine, things escalated to violence rather quickly. This fight took a while, mainly because this guy is such a bitch to hit because he is so fast. Eventually though, I stood victorious. I made my way through to the next bonfire where I talked to the mushroom for a bit and then headed off. I ran past most of the enemies in the next area. I did however see a giant black dragon who is clearly guarding some goodies. I eventually came across what I was told was Artorias' boss room, and I entered the fog, where I met the legendary Abyss Walker. He immediately threw a body at me, and we all know I have a traumatic past with people throwing bodies at me, so I flew into a blind rage and attacked the knight. He promptly put me in my place, so I came back a second time and took my revenge. And then came the long run through Izalith Township and the Abyss to Manus, the father of the Abyss. I got wombo comboed and dark beaded a couple of times, but I managed to out heal him and barely scraped by the fight the first try. I then head back towards Artorias' arena where I spoke to Hawkeye Go, a giant archer who no-scoped the black dragon from earlier out of the sky. My maxed out lightning bone wheel shield coupled with my insanely high health at this point made Calamite look like a joke. And now, with nothing left to kill, I made my way back to the kiln of the first flame. I offered up the Lord's souls that I acquired oh so long ago, and as the fire burned and the gate opened, I realized there was only one thing between me and completing this challenge. Gwyn, the Lord of Cinder. And with that, I beat Dark Souls and all of its bosses with only shields. I just wanted to say at the end here, thank you guys so much for all the support recently. We've jumped from 300 subs to about 1,000 in under a month, which is just crazy to me. So if you guys enjoy the video, please do consider subscribing, and I'll continue to make these videos as entertaining as I possibly can for you guys. Alright, peace.